Hello, lovely Sinead.
Hi, lovely.
I'm so happy to have you here. We have this is our second attempt because I am such a perfectionist that if the sound quality is terrible, I will send you a message and say it wasn't good enough. We have to do it again.
That's fine.
I don't feel like people should know this about me because I feel like on the outside, very often people view my world and they're like, she's so messy, she's so carefree, she just does stuff, and I don't feel like I share enough of what happens either behind the scenes or internally to get me to that place. So sometimes I feel like it's important to share that I have there's a lot more to me than is sometimes shared.
I understand that completely.
With that in mind, what is sacrosanct to you, or what is non-negotiable, sacred, important, too valuable to be ignored in your life?
Definitely these little snippets of time that I give myself throughout the day. I think they're the most important things because and especially in the last couple of months, I've realized how important they are. Like, I definitely went into the martyr syndrome of I have to do everything for everybody else. And as a mom of three young kids, like three young boys who've got additional needs, like there's a lot that people need from me on a day-to-day basis that I stopped doing the things for myself. And in the last sort of 2 months, I've really like been like, nope, I love you all, but you will all give me a break. And that's really hard in the summer holidays where I'm like, go away, give mummy half an hour to just do the things that I need to do. So journaling, I've published my own journal with my non-negotiables in it, which I think is so important. I do that every day without fail. I don't care what is going on. I don't care if the world is ending. That journal is being done. Um, I think really taking time to be outside in nature is massive. I'm like you, I absolutely love to see. The reason we moved where we live now is because I'm 10 minutes from the beach. So I can't live without that. I can't live without being in nature. So if I'm not at the beach, I am somewhere in nature every single day without fail, going for a walk. And we have the perfect mix of we're 10 minutes from the beach, but where we live is in the middle of a load of fields. So you walk out of our estate and you're in fields. So being out in nature is really important. I think really listening to what you need, I think is the biggest one because if I didn't listen to what I need, I wouldn't do the other things. So I think the basis of it all is that ability to really listen to what I need to be connected to myself, to be connected to my womb space, to be connected to who I am as a person, which for years I didn't do. I just did it for everybody else. Yeah, and that's what I did for a couple of months during this year, and I can definitely say makes a massive difference how I feel mentally, how I show up to my relationships, how I mother, all of these things. Like if I don't take the time that I need and listen to what I need and do that every single day, it just doesn't work.
I feel like there's something really interesting in there that a lot of women, particularly, but people listening may feel like is counterintuitive. And there's this piece of like, in order to deepen and connect and create more love and connection in our relationships, sometimes we have to give less and back off from them.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's so easy to do everything for everyone all of the time, but actually it
And
doesn't
it
take
isn't,
anyone.
right? Like, so we have this double thing where you're like, you're actually in martyrdom. You're actually in like, it's so easy for me to show up, but why aren't you giving me enough attention? And why aren't you valuing me? And why aren't you appreciating me? You know?
Yeah. And if you don't do it for yourself first, then nobody is taught how to do that. Like it was funny because I had a very similar conversation to with my oldest son on Saturday, I think it was. He'd been asked to do a few things around the house. I am a big believer in that your children should contribute to your house and do things and not get paid for it because nobody's going to clean for them. Like no one's going to pay them to clean their own house when they're older. And he'd been asked to do a few things, and I was obviously doing things at the same time. And I come upstairs and he went, "Mom," and I was like, "Yeah, babe, what's wrong?" And he was like, "Me doing those few things, I've just realised how much you actually do in this house." And I was like, "Yeah, I do a lot." And he was like, "I think we should be doing things like this more." I was like, "Oh." but that's a life lesson. It's a life lesson for him. He'll be 11 on Friday. That life lesson of it doesn't all just get done. It doesn't. There's no cleaning for it. It's me most of the time by myself with the 3 boys doing life. Like it's down to me. And he was like, "You do so much that we don't even notice, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay." And it was like I could just see that, but it's that stepping back and going, actually, no, you can do things, and you're big enough to do these things now, and actually you're big enough to work through this problem by yourself. I've realized instead of trying to do it for them, and I think especially with Cody who's got autism, I spent a lot of his life trying to do things for him because I was so scared that he wouldn't be able to do it himself. Whereas actually I wasn't teaching him anything, and the more that I sort of let go, the better he is at doing these things. Like he can do these things, and I think we are taught to matter ourselves, especially as mothers, as women, 110%, even more so as mothers, because everything should be about your kids, and that's not realistic. And you just end up burnt out and bitter and not enjoying life. But yeah, taking your hands off actually helps them and helps you. It's one of the biggest things. But we all think that that's a lack of love for the other people, but it's not. It is the best thing you can do.
I love that. And I love that, you know, the other thing that I hear the most from mothers particularly is I don't have time. You know, I don't have time. And when we've talked about this before, it's those pockets of time where you have built your business, where you've built your self-love practices, where you've stepped into, you know, you've energized yourself, you've stepped into who you are, like all of that. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you went from I don't have enough time to creating pockets of time for yourself and then building all of these goodness, this, you know,
I got really, really ill is what happened. I mastered myself that much. I got really fucking ill. Got ridiculously ill. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and I literally could not get myself up off the couch most days. I was exhausted. Like it was ridiculous the amount that I slept, but I didn't feel like I'd ever slept. And I was in so much pain. And you just get to that point where you're like, something's got to give you. Like something's actually got to give because I cannot keep doing this. And this isn't okay. And this isn't how I wanted to do life. And this is not what I want my kids to see. And I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I was very, very lucky to have an amazing doctor who diagnosed me and said, the best thing that you can do is learn to calm your nervous system. So I've spent the last nearly 4 years learning how to do that. And that's what I built my business on, and connecting to myself and understanding my womb space. But it all come from that thing of I can't do this anymore. I can't keep having horrific periods. I can't keep being in pain. I can't keep being suicidal when I bleed because I was diagnosed with PMDD as well. Like I can't keep doing all of these things, but also I can't take medication because that's not an option because I've got 3 kids I've got to look after and get up and be able to drive in the morning. So I started to learn to meditate, and I have 3 kids on my own most of the time. So I only have snippets, and my youngest at the time was like 2. He's got ADHD, so it's full on. So my youngest was 2, my oldest was 6. So I didn't have a lot of time. So it literally was like building these little practices that I do every day. So journaling takes me 10 minutes. That's why I wrote the journal, because it's for people who don't have a lot of time. It's very quick, very like, this is what you need to do. This will make a massive difference to your mindset. It was moving my body. It was choosing myself and being like, it's okay to choose myself. It's okay to not fulfill my kids' needs 24/7. And actually, it's okay to have my time. And as I started to build these things, and the more that I realized these things really helped me, and my body stopped hurting, and my periods eased, and I started to learn more and more, and then did my womb clearing, which was a massive thing for my actual periods and hormones. But just picking these daily things and learning more and more as I went along, and learning to put them together as these little practices throughout the day. Like I probably spend an hour a day doing things for myself, but not an hour altogether. Like I'll do journaling here, and then I'll go for a walk there, and then I'll do this thing here, and then when the kids are in bed, I'll make sure I really take time to do something that I really need to do. But they're not like I don't sit for 3 hours doing things. I don't have time. I'd love
I mean,
to.
it's a nice idea, but yeah.
I'd love to.
So we knew each other online and through various different people in the online space and through Instagram and stuff. But I think we properly connected through 45 Soft.
Yeah.
Because you did it.
Yeah.
Because you actually did it.
Yeah, I did.
So if you're listening, 45 Soft was my response to 75 Hard, which is a kind of very masculine shrink, work out 2 45-minute times a day, blah, 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 blah. And there's like a set of rules for that. And so I created an experience which was 45 days long, which is really about softening and being in a relationship of devotion with yourself.
Yeah.
How was your experience of that? Because I reached out because you posted every single day. Yeah,
I did, and it was around the time that we were moving house as well, so it was absolutely manic, and it really helped me to be accountable to doing that little bit of time every day that I needed. It really helped me when I was like, obviously, when all of the things, you've got to pack a house and you've got to do this and you've got to start schools and the list is endless, that it helped me not get into martyrdom. So I was like, right, I'm dedicating myself to this whilst we go through this house move so that I make sure I do this. And that's why I posted every day, because I was like, I'm accountable. Look, you can see me. You can see that I'm doing it. And sometimes we need that. Sometimes we need that kick up the ass to be like, I'm being accountable. Look, I've done it. It massively helps. But it just was that reminder every day to do it, to get yourself up, do the things that you you need to do for yourself that make a massive difference. And it actually really helped me moving house be easier, because I wasn't constantly in that stress of lists and doing, and because I was going, right, okay, that can wait for 5 minutes. I'm going to go and do this thing.
Yeah.
And I think it is important that we, especially when we know things like that coming up, that we find something that holds us accountable wherever it is, however we do it. But for me, 45 Soft was amazing to do that at that time. It was really like challenging to keep myself from that place.
And I feel like the structures, is balancing this feminine and masculine, or the logos and eros, or structure and formlessness, right? Like when we have something that's going to be chaotic, which is deeply feminine in nature because it's chaos, we need to have some structure around that. We need to have some, the polar opposite of that is the static masculine, which is that earthing, that grounding. And so it can be very, very simple. And often we think we need something huge to counteract something huge, but it's often the really simple processes or practices or routines or schedules that can be so profound, and yet our brain is like, oh, it's not complicated enough, or oh, it's not big enough, it's not going to move the needle far enough. And I feel like it's really important for us to share, particularly with your story, of like, it is those incremental upgrades, those tiny little needle moves that create over time a huge shift.
Yeah, massive shift. And I think that's something that I've really realised is it's usually the most simple things that are the hardest things to do and the hardest things to stay accountable for. Like they just are, because you're like, oh, that's really easy, I'll do that. But it's so easily forgotten. And I
feel like that's particularly true for neurodivergent brains, right? Particularly for ADHD brains. If it's not really exciting, interesting, big dopamine hit, then we're not going to do it. And yet we need it. We really need that like baseline structure. And that can be really difficult for people. And I feel like sometimes just explaining it in that way can be also really helpful, because for me, I'm like, oh, well, it's not interesting, exciting, it's boring. I'm not like, for years I just used to be like, why am I only interested in doing things that aren't boring? It's not fun, it's not fun, it's not fun. And if I listen to my own language, I'm like, oh, you mean you need a dopamine hit? Okay, well, what are the dopamine hits available? They're mostly in the fridge. Okay, no, that's not, like, that's fine, but it's not helpful in this instance. So we need to find some more variety of dopamine hits. And so what you and I are talking to here really is finding healthy dopamine hits, right? Like going and being in the sea, or watching a sunset, or being out in nature. Like those little things, turns out, can reward my system. But what I've found is that in a world where we eat Skittles or sugar sweets or, you know, high octane, high color hit, when you then like taste a peach or an apple, you're like, what even is that? We have to adjust our bodies back to what is a natural high. And for me, that same thing is true of like allowing my nervous system to become regulated by things that aren't hugely sensory has been a long process.
Yeah, I can understand that. And it's funny, like, since my youngest has been diagnosed with ADHD, I'm like, I think this actually might have some merit in my own brain. Especially when I watch like you and Ray talk about it, I'm like, maybe there's something here, because I'm exactly the same. If it's boring, I'm usually like, oh, I can't bother. Don't want to do that. And I will
Whereas
avoid
if
it.
it's interesting, you know, we'll dive right in and we'll do it. And I
Yeah.
think not enough people talking about ADHD in women. I think there's a lot of people talking about it now, but not always, you know. So I haven't talked about this much online yet, and I don't know whether I will by the time this has come out. But my first diagnosis was the same as the diagnoses in my teens, which were, it never dawned on me to ever look at ADHD or autism. But essentially I was told I was bipolar and just very intelligent and very creative, just. And I've always known there's nothing wrong with being bipolar at all, but in my body I knew that's not what it was that was causing it. And similarly to you, I also have completely undiagnosed PMDD, but couldn't understand why once a month I wanted to kill myself. Like, in some ways I believe that was normal.
And we do, because let's be honest, hysterical is like chucked about so much. You're just like, oh, it's just normal. But it's not. It's really fucking not.
And so normal is such an interesting word, isn't it? Because
yeah.
it might be normal, but it doesn't mean it's healthy or that it has to be the norm.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think there's so many women walking around with undiagnosed PMDD, just like living in this world where they're like, I just need to survive this part of the month. And it just doesn't have to be that way at all. And I used to feel that, like, I wish someone would have come to me at like when I was 14, 15 and gone, this is what it is. This is what you need to do. And I think that will probably be my life work, that I will teach young girls, this doesn't have to be the way, and you're not abnormal, but there is things that you can do to make this not.
So for people listening who don't know what PMDD is, can you tell them?
Yeah, so PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and it affects women in all different ways. But one of the biggest things that you'll notice is when you're premenstrual, the closer you get to bleed, the more detrimental your thoughts become. Not everyone becomes suicidal, but they will become highly critical, feel really low, feel really overwhelmed by life, really snappy. It's really extreme PMS. And like when we talk, obviously PMS is like a scale anyway, but PMDD is like you lose your crap at everything, you want to sleep or you can't sleep, and your body just feels like it's so overwhelmed by everything. And there's so many other things like tension headache, IBS, because your nervous system is so highly strung at that point that it just affects your body in so many different ways. Like I didn't even realize like my IBS was linked to that, or my fibromyalgia, until starting to learn about my nervous system and regulating it. And I was like, oh, well, that makes loads of sense now. That makes loads of sense why it happens the way it does. But it's mainly thought processing. So for me, there's other things that come with that. So when I ovulate, most people are like, oh, I'm going and I feel amazing. Oh, I'm not. I'm like, oh my God, please don't look at me. I feel horrific. Like, please don't take a picture of me. Please don't, like, I'm getting to ovulation and I'm feeling a bit like that. So you might notice I've not actually looked at myself because I can't, because I'm like, and I'm like, I can't, because I'll put myself off. And it's that thing of I'm aware of it and I still carry on doing things. There was a time where I just would be like, no, Evelyn, I can't do it. Like,
and I feel like that awareness is the first step, right? Like in Misfit to Maven, the Misfit to Maven journey, there are 8 steps, and the first one is always awareness, and the second one is aspiration, and then the third is acceptance, and then the fourth is action. But most people try and go straight into action, and actually we need that time, because if we don't know what's going on, we can't do anything about it. And oftentimes, just having that awareness is enough. And so like for me, my experience is for me, it's just after ovulation. It's actually day 23 to 24 of my cycle. So day 23 to 24, something happens where first of all, I hate everyone else, and everyone else is an idiot. And then I hate myself, and I am an idiot, and I just shouldn't exist. And those 2 days, I become insecure. Like but so in relationship, I need a lot of attention and I need a lot of reassurance, which is so out of character because I'm not like that for the whole of the rest of the month, like at all. And I was trying to articulate it to an ex, and I tried to describe it as what it feels like happens is from one day to the next. So from day 21 to day 22, the levels of hormones in my body change so dramatically and drastically that nothing about me is the same as it was the day before. And I feel like Jekyll and Hyde. I feel like an entirely different woman who's just arrived in my body. And I'm like, what is my life? Who are these people? Who am I? What am I doing here? And I am grouchy about it, upset about it, disoriented about it. My body doesn't feel like my own. Nothing feels like my own. And I have learned to sit on my hands for 2 days, because then by day 25, I'm like, well, I'm just really low energy and coming towards my period. It's all going to be okay. But for me, those 2 days are horrible.
Yeah. And it is like, I think noticing tracking your cycle to be able to notice some patterns is such a big deal. So mine is literally, I know when I'm about to bleed. I literally will be like, I'm about to bleed. And I was like, why? I'm like, because honestly, I couldn't hate myself more if I tried. I genuinely couldn't. That's how I feel. I'm like, I'm useless, I'm worthless. Like that's constant in my head. You're not enough, you don't do enough, you're lazy, you're a crap mom, you're a crap partner, you're a crap friend, you're a rubbish businesswoman. Like literally that is all I hear. And it's really hard to be like, that's not true. And there's sometimes where I can't be like, that's not true. There's sometimes where I'm like, okay, that is who I am. But once I bleed, within hours, I'm like, yay, hi, happy me again. And I was like, and I remember like when Rob and I first got married, trying to explain like there's gonna be this like sort of, it will gradually, you watch me change, and then I might be the most horrific person to be around, but it used to last a week. It used to be horrific. It used to last such a long time because I wasn't calm and my nervous system wasn't relaxed, and I had martyred myself all month, so it was just like it would get so big and I'd be so angry at everything. And I would be like,
And you feel like it's your fault and you don't understand it, and you don't understand that it's physical as well as mental, and you're not aware of the physical and mental connection. And just there's so like, it's so important that we have these conversations. It's so important that there are more and more women educating other women and educating men so that they understand, because it's not fair on both of us that we don't have this awareness.
No, it's not. And Rob really learned how to deal with it, and he knows, he can see it coming now, because we've been doing this for long enough for him to know now. But it's like, sometimes I just feel like I literally want to rip myself out of my own body. It's like, I don't like being here. I don't like being in my body. I don't like any of this. Like, get me out. Like, literally get me out of this body. And it's really hard to explain to another human being who doesn't have a cycle what that feels like. And like, where I literally have like sat on my kitchen floor sobbing down the phone to him when he's been away at work, and I'm like, I just don't want to be here. And obviously I've got 3 kids in the house. It's like, please don't. I'm like, I won't do anything. But like, he's just had to sit on the other end of the phone whilst I've sobbed and told him how horrific I feel. And then a few hours later I'll bleed, and I'm like, he'll ring me and like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, it's not even happened. And he'd be like,
well, and there's an element where around kind of education and around dealing with it and processes and practices, we're also really acknowledging him. Thank you for holding me, it's past.
yeah.
All of that is so important.
Yeah.
That's
one of the biggest things.
I love that we have touched on this and talked on it. And I feel like we're gonna, if it's all right with you, in the kind of after hoursy bit, then we might go a little bit deeper into some of the practices around womb healing or around connecting with your cycle, or like where to start if you recognize any of these symptoms.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. So before we jump into that, is there anything else that you wanted to share with people around these kind of themes of pockets of time and coming home to yourself and stopping martyring yourself, I think?
I think to start, it doesn't have to be big.
Yeah.
It can be the smallest step you can possibly take, like just taking yourself away from whatever is overwhelming, whether you have PMDD or whatever, even if it's just that you start to look after yourself, giving yourself 10 minutes a day, you will be surprised how much that tiny little pocket of time makes.
And even if it's you ring fence 10 minutes a day and you do nothing in them.
Yeah, even if you sit still in the quiet, like,
but
oh my God, what is this?
You don't answer anything, you don't listen to anybody else, you actually look at, like, drop into, how am I feeling? What am I feeling? Because I feel like when people are experiencing overwhelm and pain, it gets so much that we numb it and then we disassociate, and then we find it, we're like, oh, I can do more when I disassociate, and then we do more and we do more, and that gap between who we are and how we feel becomes bigger.
Yeah, and that's it. It doesn't have to be like this monumental thing that you do. It really doesn't matter what it is. It can be absolutely nothing. It's just creating that time is just so important. And once you start to do it once, and as comfortable as it will feel the first time you do it, keep at it, because it's game changing. It really is game changing.
Thank you for coming and sharing a bit of your story and for this. And if you're listening to this and you want a first step, set an alarm for 10 minutes a day and just go and get yourself Sinead's journal, which I will pop in the link, and then also think about coming and doing 45 Soft with me, which is a 45-day challenge where you get an email every day. It's completely free, and I have that for people like us who need somewhere to start and feel like time and money are the pieces that are making it too overwhelming, or that they're not important enough. So decide that you are important enough and ring fence 10 minutes, start a journaling practice, and come and do 45 Soft.
Yes, definitely. They definitely help.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to put all the links in, and we are going to pop over to what I'm calling our after hours area and have a little conversation about womb health and PMDD.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.